What's up? I am testing out my live stream. I've never done this before, so I don't know. Am I doing okay? Let's see. Oh, there we go. I was out of focus. Well, I'm glad I'm refocused. Hi there. I just started for the first time ever streaming, so I don't know what this looks like on your end. Hopefully it's coming through okay. I was going to talk a little bit about what ADHD is, and I'm not sure if you're familiar or wanted more information on it, but if I talk about anything that you'd like me to cover more in depth, just let me know. Figured I'll give it a couple of maybe a minute or two to see if anyone else comes on in. Where are you from? I wonder if my commenting is okay. Oh, that's cool. I don't know. I'm trying to figure this out. Yeah, I know. Too bad. All right, let's see here. Oh, hi, Mom. Was that you who was in here just a second ago? Were you the one in here just a minute ago when I was talking? Because somebody was in here, I just didn't know who it was. Well, let me tell you. Okay. Well, so let me put your question up. Well, Sharon, hold on. I'm going to see. Let's do this. All right, so a very good question was just asked of me. What is ADHD? Well, to put it plainly, it is a neurological condition that stems from a lack of dopamine, a neurotransmitter, and sometimes epinephrine. Now, when those are in short supply, ADHD is one of the many things that can happen. Because these neurotransmitters are vital in order to transmit, if we're thinking of a computer, transmit data from one side of a gap between neurons to the other side. So in order for that data, your thought, to go from one to the other, you have to have like dopamine, let's say, and it's going to act like your little boat for this little tiny bit of information. And it's going to carry it to the other side, or it's going to deliver it and let it go on its merry way. But if you don't have enough dopamine, then basically your thoughts come to a dead end, and they're busy waiting on more dopamine to show up. So it's you could think of it as potentially causing a delay in thinking, but specifically it affects the executive portion of your brain, which is up in here, up in here, up in here. So when you have this deficit, what happens is the executive part, which controls like impulse behavior, which allows for a person to prioritize what needs to get done more, it will make it harder for that part of the brain to help control the rest. So ADHD basically is just it's just a lack of a chemical. That's where it all comes from. And what that lack of chemical does is mess up somebody's life. No, just kidding. What it does is it makes it very hard for someone, let's say a kid, to tune out a stray thought or something that grabs their attention. It makes it difficult. Not that they don't want to, but just like any other kid may not want to pay attention to that dog running around in the grass outside the school window because they know they need to learn whatever you're learning about fractions or whatever. But with the ADHD brain, the dopamine is not there to bring you back from that daydreaming, and so it just leads to a whole bunch of other symptoms too. So that is what ADHD is. Thank you. Thank you. I try to be interesting. Now, ADHD by it's actually kind of hard to say ADHD, but I want to stumble on that all the time. But ADD was the old term, and honestly, the one that probably a lot of older folks like myself are more familiar with is ADD. And it's one of the most studied things in mental health is attention deficit disorders. My voice is cracky. What? Like bad? Is it like this, where it's just cracking? Is it like I'm on puberty or going through puberty, or is it like the microphone's messed up? Hello? Oh. All right, well, how is it now? Does it sound any better? I was trying to push the plug in more. Is it any better now? Is it any better now? No, 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 no. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. Say hello to me. Come here. There we go. Somewhat better. I wonder. Where is she here? It said that there was some sort of echo cancellation. I wonder if that is what's causing. Okay, is that better? I just turned off the echo cancellation. Is that better? Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 4, 5, 6. Testing, testing, 7, 8, 9. Testing, testing, 10. Wait, you still hear static? This should not be happening. I'm going to unplug the mic. Okay. Hopefully that fixed it. Did it fix it? Little, yes. Does yes mean fixed it like it's perfect, or fixed it like it happens less often? Talk. Okay. Yes, ma'am. All right. Talking about ADHD, and hopefully the microphone is working at this time because it wasn't working a second ago very well. I'm testing it now, waiting for my guest to tell me that they can hear me properly. Still, statistically, what? Um, Statically is still statically. I get an idea. I might need to switch microphones. Oh, maybe it's too sensitive. Hold on. Let's see. Test. Oh, I see why. Okay, test. Okay. How is it now? How is it now? Does it still have static? Does it still have static? This is on I'm shooting on my cell phone, and I got my cell phone turned to do not disturb, so I can't call or anything and let you know one way or the other. It's still the same. Why? Why would it be the same? Let me go through this, settings. Video. Those look fine. Hello, what is that doing? Oh, it's on the other screen. Hiding. Well, shoot. I wonder if it's just better to not have the microphone go through the phone. Instead, pull out my other. She's at work. She's at work right now, so I don't know. But so it's real bad. Let me see. I need to get my USB mic out. Hold on. All right, let's see here. Let's see. I'm gonna unplug this mic. Hopefully you get better. Testing. Is this any better? Is this any better? The staticky mic problem. Do you hear me better now? Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Yes. Okay. Good. All right. So feel free to ask me anything. If you just got here, I had a question already about what is ADHD, but I'll be happy to go back over that. So bring them on. Bring on the questions. For general information, I am someone who got diagnosed with ADHD as an early 40s person, and didn't know it, but finding out now, it does explain a lot of my history, a lot of the issues I've had to go through. So when I'm talking about anything from, I don't know, changing careers or having issues at work, or, having a really hard time studying for different subjects, especially if I didn't like them. ADHD has been there through my whole life. I didn't realize how bad it was until I actually took a good hard look. And honestly, I used to beat myself up for it, and still kind of do. But yeah, it's not something that you love to have, or or seeking to want in yourself or somebody else. But good news is that it does allow someone with ADHD to become really focused on something that they really care about. So if you are, I don't know, let's say a real enthusiast when it comes to skydiving, or maybe you're really into surgery, something like that, right? You have the ability to hyper focus on it. Not necessarily better than a normal person, but it's easier for the time to slip away and to actually do a whole lot of work without realizing it. Okay, so you're saying, is it getting better? Yeah, I'm trying out different medicines. I've gone through Adderall, Vyvanse, and now I'm on Concerta. So Concerta seems to be pretty good, which, we just have to kind of get it nailed down. What's going to react with your body better? So like with Adderall, I'd probably say I saw maybe a 20-ish to 30-ish% boost of, or I shouldn't say boost, like 20 to 30% reduction of symptoms. And then with Vyvanse, it was around maybe 35, 40% reduction of symptoms. And that's with adjusting dosages and all that. But it had a side effect of, it made me very anxious, like I would catch myself if my mind drifted towards something that it shouldn't be. However, I had a much harder time just getting started on projects. So what ended up happening was I realized that I wasn't doing what I needed to do, but I would get super anxious because I wasn't doing what I needed to do. It was hard to get me going with that one. I don't know why. But I've recently switched to Concerta, and what I've noticed with that one is when I first started it, the best way I can describe it is, maybe you've had it, those rare epiphanies that you have sometime in your life where you're just like, everything just makes sense, and you're just sitting there or doing something, and it's like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it like that. Why didn't I think of it like that? That makes total sense now. Everything makes sense. Well, anyways, after starting Concerta, I had like 2 or 3 of those all in a row, like the day of my first dosage, and then the next day. And since then, it's kind of, just mellowed out a little. but a lot of that has to do with, sleep, because without sleep, your body just can't make enough dopamine to help out. I mean, that's what these pills do. They're supposed to, well, they do help increase the production of dopamine and was it epinephrine? Wait, it's not epinephrine. Oh, what is it? I can't remember. Anyways, maybe it is epinephrine. I can't remember. But it increases the production of those, so you have more of those floating around in your brain, which is supposed to bring you to the normal level of what someone with ADHD lacks. So everyone's up here with a certain level of dopamine floating around in their brain, helping them think better, helping their executive brain limit their impulsiveness and so on. But, because of ADHD, you got less of that production. So taking the medicine is supposed to, push that part of the dopamine production into a higher gear, hoping that you can come up close to everybody else. And like I said, with the first couple of medicines that I tried, I wasn't getting there. I was at best, on the best day, maybe 50% reduction of symptoms. So right now with this, I'd probably say, I want to say there's like a 60 to 70% of reduction with me. And I definitely notice when I don't get my sleep that just it crushes everything, though. It doesn't matter if I took the ADHD medicine or not. Let's see. Okay. What should parents look for? Well, I'm keeping an eye on my own kid right now. I have a suspicion that she might be ADHD. I had the school look into it, and they said, well, she's too young. She's in kinder. Everyone in kinder has a hard time paying attention, so we're not really seeing anything affect her school performance right now. So too bad, so sad. But I'm an ex-elementary teacher. I never taught kinder really, but I did teach first and second. And when I look at her behavior, I'm not being her teacher, so it may be different, it may be biased, but I noticed that she does get like really hooked on certain things. And it is really hard to pull her away from it. And it's just like that hyper-focus stuff. And that's why people with ADHD have, I don't want to say obsessions, but their brain will guide them toward activities or things that produce dopamine on their own. So it's kind of like your brain knows you're starving, right? So it makes you feel hunger. Your brain knows it's not getting enough dopamine, so it will try to steer you toward things that will pump up that dopamine level. So anything super exciting to you is going to pump it up. And that could be anything. It could be learning about dinosaurs. Maybe you're just really into dinosaurs. For some, it could be the thrill of hunting or skydiving or joining the police force, whatever. So when you're trying to identify in a kid, you want to look for things where, they are not paying attention, obviously, but more so than what you would typically think of as a kid. You would think of them more as you would see someone with ADHD more as like spacey, where you could be talking to them, making eye contact, and you ask them to basically say what you just said back, and they have a really hard time. And they just in one ear, out the other. I used to hear that all the time from my parents. It's just in one ear, out the other with you, huh? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Or my parents would also say, you only listen when you want to listen. And it's not that I didn't want to listen. I just was so focused on like that cartoon show or something. And, I think my parents had it or have it to some degree. And so, if you've grown up with it, and your whole family has grown up with it to some degree, it's going to be much harder for any of you to identify it, because in your eyes, you all are the same, right? Oh, I acted like that when I was a kid, so why should I be, worried about her? She's exactly the way I was. But, if you look at it outside of your little universe, then you'll notice that that is not average. That's not typical. ADHD is roughly, there's no way to measure the whole population, but the best estimates put it somewhere around 5, maybe up to 10% of the population. So out of America, you're looking somewhere between, I'd say, about 17 million to 35 million people, somewhere in there. Anything else parents should look for? Now, I feel like there's more. I'm just not thinking of it right now. Do you outgrow it? Let's see. There is a chance that as you grow up, that your brain will naturally, produce more dopamine on its own. However, there are a lot of researchers that believe that that's not the case, that you just get better at managing it. Now, if you go through life and you're always having a really hard time with stuff, you may invent, or if you were diagnosed as a kid, learn different strategies to deal with it. And by the time you're older, you don't necessarily need medicine, because you figured out a way to maneuver your thinking and your get around your own brain for certain things. So I'm on the side of, you don't really outgrow it. You just learn to hide it better. So there really isn't much reason why your brain would kickstart its dopamine production at a certain age, because you can identify this stuff when you're like 5 years old, even 3 years old. I've heard of kids getting put on medicine because they did test and they came out positive for ADHD. And it can be measured actually on certain brain scans now. They're identifying it better. It's just costly. So it's easier and more cost effective to, just do some question and answer stuff. All right. Any other questions? Those were very good. Thank you, by the way. How do you test? Testing, well, if you're talking about the brain scan, that's something that has to get referred to from a doctor. But if you're just talking about normal tests, you're looking at going to a psychiatrist, preferably one who has dealt with this stuff before. I mean, you could technically go to somebody who's fresh and brand new in it, but there's a lot of nuance. It's not like they ask you like 1 or 2 questions and it's like, oh yeah, for sure. Or a doctor who's like feeling your leg to see if it's broken. Whoop, there's a definite bone sticking out of your skin. This one, because it can be hidden behind behavior, repetition, learned behaviors, and just time, that you have to go through a checklist. I'd say roughly, I want to say it was about 22 questions. And with that, let's see here, do that. And with that, they basically are asking you anything from like what's the problem? What are you noticing? And then quantifying that, like, how long has that been going on? Just a couple of weeks, couple of months, couple of years, and so on. And so they'll try to give a score to each one of these questions. And then for it to be ADHD, it has to have showed up in some regard before you were 12 years old. It can't just be something that starts late in life. I mean, if it does, you could still have an issue, but it's just not going to be ADHD. You're talking about maybe like brain damage, blunt force trauma, car crash, things like that would cause a similar kind of condition. But to be ADHD, it means there was some genetic problem during your development. And that's why you can attribute roughly 75 to 80% of ADHD to genes, to genetic markers that are traveling down generations. You're welcome. You're welcome, Sharon. I hope I'm still coming through loud and clear. And I know, as far as testing goes, I know that in certain countries, testing can be really rare, really hard to get. It's I know there's long wait lists in certain countries, and it's partially because of the pandemic, but it's just being overwhelmed. It's not, and unfortunately, it sometimes is not taken very seriously, and so you got people that don't know making snap judgments that this is really not a big deal, and when it really is. And so what you got to do is it's like, how do you communicate something that no one else or somebody else cannot possibly understand? They can never sit in your shoes for this thing. You break a leg, you can communicate your pain, but if the person has never broken a leg, they will only try to guess. And their guess of what it feels like could be wildly off. Like, okay, so it's like, when you got a sprained muscle or something. But if they've never broken their leg or never will, then they will never quite understand the trouble of having to deal with life. So it's with that disability. And so with ADHD, it has been classified as a disability now. It has to obviously impact your life. It's not just like, hey, I got it. But it has to impact your quality of life, your jobs. One thing for me is having to deal with being forgetful with my career stuff there. It's just forgetting to return an email. Or you're doing a project, an email comes in, and you're like, I'm going to forget this email if I don't do it right now. So I'm going to go and do this email. But then you forget where you left off on your project, or you forgot about your project entirely, and you just spent an hour and a half on this one email. That's happened to me all the time. So I find it really difficult to manage that kind of stuff at times. Another big thing for me is that I noticed when I was going through my own graduate school and stuff, that when I would go to a library to try to study, that was the worst. It was the worst because it was so quiet that any sound immediately got my attention. And then if my back was toward the door or toward anything else, if I heard a sound, for some reason, I felt I had this irresistible urge to look to see what was happening. Otherwise, I tried to force myself not to look, but then I just got this feeling of like somebody sneaking up behind me. So it's almost like I've told people that it's kind of like being the like emergency alarm for a tribe when you know, like maybe when a long time ago we were living in tribes and we would have to make sure I don't know, lion or tiger wasn't sneaking up on us. So ADHD people tend to have this urge to find out what's going on at all times. And I guess that's a good thing in some respects, because you got this urge to always know what's going on and to be active and to actually be part of the exploration of it. So it's, in that regard, it's kind of cool. But no, studying, very difficult already. How many famous people have it? I don't know a quantity. I mean, other than somewhere between 5 to 10% of most of the general population have it. So you're talking 1 out of every 10 to 1 out of every 20 people. So if celebrities counted as regular people, then you could expect them to be roughly the same amount, like 5 to 10%. I would argue, though, because acting requires a lot of learning, it's non-repetitious things, it's exciting. I would argue that acting would probably attract more ADHD people than it would otherwise, than would a normal like office job. So if there has been any sort of study in terms of famous people, I would argue jobs that would get notoriety and attention would probably have a heavy pull for ADHD people. Anything that's exciting. That's why police and firefighters and military tend to have more ADHD in their ranks, which may not be a good thing, you know, if the police are out there and acting super impulsively. I mean, you know, what do you do? But I haven't seen or heard about any study that looks at that specifically. I've heard that they believe Albert Einstein had ADD. Richard Branson, the guy who started Virgin Airlines and Virgin Music, the billionaire guy who owns his own island. I want to say Bill Gates, but I could be wrong. But I thought I heard that somewhere. I'd have to look, but those are some of the ones that just stick out in my mind. You know, there's a term that people give to ADHD thinking. It's called neurodivergent. Makes me think of that movie. What is it? I think it's called Divergent or something like that. But basically, yeah, it kind of means that you don't think in the traditional ways of thinking, and therefore you have issues with fitting in lots of places. But you do tend to think around the box. And part of that is because you've had to come up with solutions to help yourself in everyday life, that sometimes it requires different thinking to solve a problem, like in a business or whatnot. So there are actual businesses out there that actually want some people with ADHD in their planning and high up teams, just for that fact alone. How hard to tell your employer about it, and should you? That is tough. A lot of people say that you can, well, you're not, as an employer, and according to federal law, you're not supposed to discriminate based off of a disability, which ADHD is a disability. It's classified as that. But there is a lot of recommendation out there that says, don't shoot yourself in the foot, don't disclose. I don't know. I'm kind of I'm on the fence because, yeah, if you really want this job, that's one thing. And if you don't need any accommodations, you don't need any help or sympathy, then I would just say don't disclose. But if you really need some help, you know, even if it's just like a reminder, like that's one of my big things. I just need a reminder every now and then that a deadline's coming up. Otherwise, I get pulled off task and start working on something else. But anyways, a reminder is always pretty handy. Anyways, see, got distracted, start thinking of other things. So I was talking to my employer about this, and because, you know, I just got diagnosed within the past year. And one of the things that they said when I contacted the disability department, whatever they are, and I told them my concern. I'm like, you know, I've had a lot of people tell me I shouldn't be bringing this up, but I'm going to take the chance because I think, you know, it could help me be a better employee here. And one of the things, I just suggested a couple of things that I would find beneficial, such as having, because I currently don't have an office there, like having an office that I could share for just a few hours every couple of days, something kind of simple, or just having something simple like that email reminder shoot out specifically to me. You know, you could even automate it, but I don't know. When I sent that email, the director of the disabilities HR department got back to me and said that they were really disappointed that they heard about people saying those negative things, that, you know, don't try to get a little bit of accommodation for yourself. She was like, oh yeah, we totally will help you out. We got a lot of people we help out. And, you know, that's not a problem at all. I'm really disappointed that people are passing out bad information. So in some regards, I would say feel it out, but also take into account the people giving you advice might also be the people that don't know what ADHD does to you. So they may see it as like ADHD equals bad, which will equal termination. So that honestly could be an indicator that what they think of you in a way, like, oh, ADHD is so bad, you can't ask for a little bit of help. They may think that you're a screw up because they say something like that. So anyways, if your employer is so against you getting a little bit of assistance or has virtually zero idea of what you need, part of me says that's not a good employer for you. Just get out, just leave. Find a place that's more welcoming. Or one thing is entrepreneurship, starting your own business. That is a spot where ADHD people tend to be heavily overrepresented. And so I would say part of that is because, you know, you're out of the box thinking, you get tired of the routine, tired of the mundane. You want to be your own boss. You don't want people questioning you or always looking over your shoulder. So that's why I'm trying to do like this right now. I'm trying to start a little something. At least maybe I could, if for nothing else, help somebody else out who needs some guidance. But I would love to help. So if your employer is just not getting along with you, and like I said, through my career, I've had employers that I didn't know I had ADHD, and we just rubbed each other the wrong way because they and me couldn't figure out why I was missing deadlines and stuff. Let's see. Being a disability, can you apply for disability pay? Yes, in certain circumstances. It goes back to that question of how bad is it? Is it really affecting your quality of life and your employability? So much so that you can't function in a regular job. It's kind of like if you, I don't know, become an amputee and you lose an arm or a leg. How bad does that affect your employability at whatever your trade was? You know, just off the cuff, you know, it would be really hard to be a quarterback if you lost your throwing arm. You know, it's just one of those things. Nothing against people who are quarterbacks that have lost an arm, but that would obviously hurt your chances of doing well. And so, yeah, you could apply. Good question, though. Good question. A very good question. Is there any others before I'm going to probably end this here in just a second? But any other questions before I say toodaloo? Thirsty. Hello. Any other questions? If not, I'll say goodbye. Thank you. We aim to please. All right. Goodbye, whoever you are. See if I can look like my picture there. Where is it? All right, here. All right, I will say goodbye. Thank you for joining, and next time. My wife is